Okay. So after up titration of insulin, you find that still patients are not able to achieve good control. What happens actually, let's say we have started with the basal insulin 10 units, sugars are not yet controlled. You keep on increasing the doses. This is called optimization of insulin. And then what happens, even you are giving good amount of insulin, let's say more than zero point 0.5 units per kilogram of body weight as a basal insulin supplementation, fastings are well controlled, but still HbA1c is not controlled, and because of postprandial hyperglycemia, that is postprandial blood glucose are not controlled, fasting is controlled because of basal insulin.
Would you be
What
अभी तो नहीं?
happens, we have to bring in other insulins also, and this is called intensification of insulin therapy. So this is a graph which is telling us that as the time is passing, you have to titrate your doses, up titrate, and then bring in intensification with the addition of other types of insulin. Why it is important that poor glycemic control is a cause for bad metabolic legacy. Com- you can say accumulation of glycemic burden over a time leads to complications. So this slide tells us that as the years are advancing, we accumulate large amount of glycemic burden because of poor control, and this is a factor which is responsible for the development of long-term complication. The problem with insulin therapy is that there is a clinical inertia. Inertia is there both at patient's level and at physician's level. You have so many concerns about insulin regarding patient's approach. They always fear, there is a fear of insulin injections, prick injection fear is there. There is a lack of education. Patient fear weight gain, hypoglycemia. They don't feel themselves that they will be able to manage the insulin therapy. Our physicians are also afraid of using insulin either because of their lack of, you can say, complete education regarding insulin therapy. They have concern regarding hypo weight gain, and then of course financial constraints are also there. But when to initiate insulin therapy in this COVID era, the indication of COVID-19 and young type 2 diabetic patients who are given large amount of steroid is the latest, you can say, addition to the insulin therapy. And you find here starting insulin either at the diagnosis. Once you diagnose the patient as type 2 diabetic, but still he is having huge amount of glucotoxicity, lipotoxicity. Fasting and postprandial are very high. HbA1c is in the tune of 9 to 11% or more, and these are the patients who are suffering from infection, sepsis, myocardial infarction, acute unstable angina, diabetic ketoacidosis, or they are pregnant, doing surgery. All this setting is a setting for starting insulin even at the time of diagnosis of diabetes. Then most of the time what happens, patient is a diabetic, he is on oral drugs, but he develops this infection, sepsis, myocardial infarction, or he develops hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, or patient develops pregnancy or significant diabetic kidney disease. This is again a scenario for the start of insulin. But most common scenario is when our patients are using 2 or 3 or even 4 oral anti-diabetic drugs, still their blood glucose is high, their fasting is more than 150, postprandials are more than 200, 250, HbA1c is like something like 8.5 or so. And we all know that addition of a third oral anti-diabetic drug reduces HbA1c by 0.5%. If you are adding a fourth anti-diabetic drug, it will be having a efficacy of something like 0.2% reduction of HbA1c, not more than that. And that's why we have to bring in insulin after 2 or 3 oral anti-diabetic drug failure. And this is the most common scenario. So you have so many variety of patients, either they are pregnant now, or they are having inadequate control, or they are hospitalized because of some acute infections or other cardiovascular events, or they are undergoing surgery, or in fact they are having huge hyperglycemia in spite of so many oral anti-diabetic drugs on board. There are 7 clinical situations like infections, like inflammation, injury, ischemia, invasive process, iatrogenic intervention like corticosteroids during COVID, and intensive like short-term intensive therapies like acute hyperglycemia, or long-term where the blood glucose are very, very high because of long duration of diabetes. So here you find there are 7 I's. I stands for so many: infection, inflammation, injury, ischemia, etc. So here you have to bring in insulin either for a shorter time or for permanent after failure of your oral drugs. So ACE guidelines, American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, say that you have to initiate insulin once HbA1c is more than 9, patient is already on 2 or 3 oral antidiabetic drugs. Combination of drugs are given and still patient is having a large amount of glucotoxicity, and you have to intensify treatment even after patient is taking multiple oral antidiabetic drugs. And this is a ACE guidelines, you can say, algorithm, which says that if the HbA1c is more than 9% on the extreme right, on between less than 7 you have to give monotherapy, 7 to 9 you can use dual therapy or triple therapy. But on extreme right, if you see HbA1c more than 9, and ACE guidelines says that you have to bring in insulin either with or without oral anti-diabetic drugs. ADA again highlights that patients who are having severe hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, having catabolic symptoms like weight loss, hypertriglyceridemia, ketosis, and they are losing weight and their blood glucose is very high, like A1C of more than 10, you have to bring in insulin. Insulin can be added to oral drugs like metformin. And because of progressive nature of type 2 diabetes, insulin is a important molecule. Current recommendations for hospitalized patient is also important. Many times our patients who are well controlled with oral drugs, now because of some acute infections or acute injuries or acute procedures or acute myocardial infarction, etc., they are now admitted. And there we know that blood glucose are not controlled with oral drugs. You have to shift the patient to insulin. And here the target for blood glucose is between 140 to 180 milligram. And in non-critical illness, you have to keep the pre-meals less than 140. Random blood glucose should be more less than 180. And we have to assess the you can say glucose profile and keep on increasing or decreasing. Here the important message is that sliding scale insulin is to be discouraged. Many a times we see people are given this sliding scale insulin regimen. If the blood glucose is between this and this, you add 2 units. If it is between this and this, you add 8 units. But if it is less than, let's say, 100, you don't give insulin. That is called sliding scale. And sliding scale is a faulty way of treating our diabetic patient. What is the cause of faultiness there? Because what happens, diabetic patient require insulin every time. There is a basal component, there is a bolus component. What happens when you have blood glucose in the lower range and you stop insulin, after 4 hours you will find sugars are very high. Then you give a larger dose, and then after 2 hours patient develops hypoglycemia. That's why you keep on increasing and decreasing the doses of insulin, but never stop insulin in your hospitalized patients. So here you find that patients who are having evidence of acute, you can say, hyperglycemia. Here you have patients who are newly diagnosed patient, but their sugar profile is very, very high. They are having glucolipotoxicity, and here HbA1c is very high. They are severely symptomatic. They are losing weight. They may have some ketones also, and they are severely symptomatic. And they say that because of this glucolipotoxicity, if you give in newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic patient insulin for few weeks and months, for example, here they say 2 weeks to 3 months, then you will target this glucolipotoxicity and your patient will achieve good control after 2 to 4 weeks. And now you can shift the patient to oral therapy. He will now require lesser amount of oral drugs, and well controlled sugar profile will remain for a long time, because you have taken care of glucolipotoxicity with a intensified insulin therapy right at the diagnosis of these type 2 diabetic patients. So avoiding therapeutic inertia is very, very important. That is most important, that you are giving 2 drugs or 3 drugs and 4 drugs and still patient is uncontrolled, and we thought that probably next time he will be coming with good results. Duration of diabetes is increasing, endogenous insulin is decreasing, and we are still waiting for a long time. That is called therapeutic inertia. And all patients should be educated about the progressive nature of the type 2 diabetics, and insulin should not be used as a threat or a sign of personal failure or punishment. And you should always explain to this patient that after 2 or 3 oral antidiabetic drugs, you have to give in insulin. So insulin is a expected treatment. That is a very important line, I should say. Every type 2 diabetic patient will require insulin. After some require after 5 years, some require after 8 years, some require 10 years, but most of them will require insulin after 8 to 12 years of diabetics duration, because endogenous insulin is going down and you require insulin because you are already giving 2 or 3 antidiabetic drugs and patient is still having very high HbA1c. So moving along the treatment algorithm promptly is a proactive approach for the patient's management. And here, what is the proactive algorithm? You start with diet and metformin and you bring in combination of therapy very early. And then with this combination, your patient is achieving a HbA1c of less than 7. Then, of course, because of progressive nature, there will be deterioration in glucose profile, and you will then up titrate the oral drugs. But what happens after some time, again, patient will show impairment in glucose control, and this is the time to bring in insulin. And people most of the time are bringing in basal insulin as if one single shot with oral drugs. And then, of course, as the disease further advances, you have to bring in multiple insulin injections. So as the duration of diabetes is increasing, target is difficult to achieve with oral drugs, and you have to bring in insulin. So what happens once a patient is coming to us with a large glucose load? He is having high HbA1c, fasting PP are very, very high, and we can see that fastings are very, very high. So here a concept is fixed fasting first. What happens if you look here? Green is the normal glucose profile of a person who is without diabetes, but because of uncontrolled hyperglycemia in type 2 diabetes, he is having elevated fasting glucose that is depicted by red, you can say, area. And once you have higher fasting, postprandial will be also high. But when you give a basal insulin, you will target that fixed fasting first is now a important concept. And here, because fastings are well controlled, so what happens now? Even postprandials are going down. And now if the postprandials are still high and you are giving oral drugs, then of course you may target this postprandial with prandial insulin. Otherwise, most of the time what happens, once your fasting are fixed by basal insulin, postprandial glucose profile will be controlled by daytime oral anti-diabetic drugs like sulfonylurea, DPP-4 inhibitors, metformin, etc. And then patient may be well controlled for a long duration of time with this basal insulin. So basal insulin, if you see here, it is a busy slide, but on the right side, lower panel, 41% of your patient will be achieving a HbA1c of less than 7 once basal insulin regimen is started in your type 2 diabetic patient. There is a term called BIDS therapy, that is bedtime insulin and daytime sulfonylurea. Now we have started calling it BOTS, BOTS, that is basal insulin supported oral therapy, because sometimes patient is not on sulfonylurea, so BIDS is a defective term there. So we say BOTS, that is basal insulin supported oral therapy. And here actually you are taking care of fasting hyperglycemia, which is because of increase in hepatic glucose output during the night time, and patient even taking his dinner at 8 or 9 and his fastings are 200, 250. He says to us that, doctor, I have not eaten anything in the night time. Why my blood glucose are so high even in the fasting stage at 7 or 8 a.m.? This is because of very high hepatic glucose output, and because of hepatic insulin resistance, this is high. And your oral drugs are not able to target this hepatic insulin resistance. So whatever oral drugs you keep on increasing, sugar profile, particularly at the fasting level, will remain high and they require insulin. Here, another important argument is that insulin, small amount of is required to reduce hepatic glucose output, and larger insulin is required for the glucose uptake by the muscles. So even if you are giving a small amount of insulin in the night time, your patient's fasting glucose will be well controlled. And because fasting is well controlled, probably there will be a advantage at the time of postprandial also, and your patient will be having good control. So what are the characteristics of this basal insulin? Typically, they are long-acting insulin given single dose every day. They decrease hepatic glucose output. There are analogs which are available as compared to NPH, which is not 24-hour action profile. We have now insulin glulysin, insulin degludec, insulin glargine U100 or insulin glargine U300, which are long acting. These basal insulin are not having any peak now. Because of lack of peak, they do not cause nocturnal hypoglycemia as compared to NPH insulin. And they have very low risk of hypoglycemia. And now glargine U300 is available, which is again having very, you can say, long duration of action and without peak. And of course, we have now insulin degludec also. So here you can see, as compared to NPH, which is not lasting for 24 hours, the duration of action is 14 hour plus minus. As compared to that, if you look into glargine, datimir, glargine U300 and insulin degludec, they are all long acting. Insulin glargine and datimir something like 24 hour. Sometimes datimir is 20 hours only, but glargine U300 and insulin degludec are long acting insulin. And the important point is they are peakless insulin. And if you see the time action profile of this long acting insulin, you find that the red graph is showing NPH. So there is a peak here, and because of this peak, nocturnal hypoglycemia is higher with NPH. But as compared to that, if you look into insulin glargine U100 or U300, they are flat profile, and insulin degludec again flat profile, no insulin peaks there. And that's why they have long duration of action. And you can intensify the insulin therapy here, starting with a small dose. Here, ACE guidelines are telling us that you can start with according to the weight of the patient, according to the severity of hyperglycemia. If HbA1c is less than 8%, you can give 1 to 0.1 to 0.2 unit per kilogram of body weight as a starting dose. If the A1C is more than 8, you can give 0.2 to 0.3 unit per kilogram of body weight. And then, of course, look at the fasting and keep on up titrating every 3 days or every 5 days by a, you can say, increment of 2 units to 4 units or so. There are 7 vital T's for basal insulin use in type 2 diabetic patients. First T is treatment initiation. You can start with insulin. Timing of administration, it is 24-hour these drugs, so you can give once a day. And time is really not important there, because every time you have to give it at that time. It is subcutaneous insulin injection. Target according to the target. You keep on looking at the fasting blood glucose, and you keep on up titrating the doses. And transportation and storage is to be explained to the patient. Once a vial is in use or pen is in use, you can keep it in between 20, below 30 degrees centigrade at room temperature. This is very important. Sometimes what happens, our patient tells us that he forget to keep the insulin in the refrigerator and he has thrown it. So if the room temperature is below 30 degree, the vial which is in use or pen which is in use can be kept at 28 days or 30 days. It is not spoiled there. So never freeze the insulin and never throw the insulin if it is in the room for 28 days or so. And tablets can be used with basal insulin. Most commonly, we are using metformin, but you can also use DPP-4 inhibitor with metformin or sulfonylurea with metformin with basal insulin. And tool of monitoring is very, very important. You have to keep on looking at the fasting glucose profile and looking at how to monitor this patient with fasting glucose, and keep on up titrating. Explain hypoglycemia to your patients. And of course, patient after some time will be very, very confident, and he will keep on managing his own by increasing or decreasing the doses of insulin by 2 units or so. So recommended usual initial dose is 10 units or zero point 0.1 to 2 units, 0.2 units per kilogram body weight. Adjust, you give it in the bedtime and look at the fasting and avoid hypoglycemia. And the once your patient is on basal insulin, and what happens, his fastings are well controlled. but his postprandials are higher and his HbA1c is higher because of higher postprandial, then you have to intensify the insulin. What happens? You have started insulin, for example, basal 10 or 12 or 15 or so, but you are not up titrating them. You are not optimizing that treatment. But once patient is having good control of fasting, but still postprandials are high, it requires intensification of insulin. And here intensification means in addition to fasting, in addition to basal insulin, you have to bring in prandial insulin. That is called intensification of insulin, because people are afraid of intensifying because of treatment complexity, because now you are using two types of insulin. One is long acting basal and other is short acting prandial, or you can say meal time insulin. It is inflexible because you have to now look at the time of your meal and then you take prandial insulin. More chances of hypoglycemia. People using more insulin now may have more weight gain, and there is always a clinical inertia which is there at the level of patient as well as at the physician. So once basal insulin is not enough to control hyperglycemia, basal insulin is to be added with a prandial insulin. It is called basal plus prandial. And you give a prandial insulin to the meal which is the largest meal, or a meal which is having postprandial hyperglycemia, which is very high. So you start with a basal and you start with a prandial there. And then if the prandial insulin is taking care of the post-meal hyperglycemia, patient's HbA1c will now settle. But what happens sometime after some weeks and months, his another meal require a addition of prandial, and it is called basal plus 2. And then of course you have to give basal bolus therapy. Thereby you are giving three boluses before each breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and one long-acting basal insulin. This is called basal bolus therapy. This therapy we are using mostly in our admitted patient where we require a very tight hyperglycemic management. Sometimes people are using pre-mixed insulin like 30-70 or 50-50 or 25-75. Here you are using either once a day this pre-mixed insulin, or most of the time we are using them twice a day. So you are giving before breakfast, before dinner, and then you start with a low dose and gradually increase. So here you can have options of intensifying insulin. Basal insulin, you can give basal plus. Basal insulin can be given now as a pre-mixed twice a day, or if you are giving pre-mixed twice a day, you can give basal bolus therapy to them. There is again there is a co-formulation where the degludec and aspart is coming in a single you can say vial or pen. So this is called co-formulation insulin. You can also use co-formulation as once a day or even twice a day. So once your patient is on insulin basal and is not controlled, basal plus, as we discussed, can be given. Here they highlighted that you have to target one of the largest meal with a prandial insulin, and these are the prandial insulin which we are commonly using. In addition to human regular insulin, you can use human lispro, human aspart, human glulysin. These three are analogs, and human regular insulin is a human insulin. Of course, inhaled insulin is also a prandial insulin, but at present it is not available in India. These are the insulin which are having shorter duration of action. Their action starts after, let's say, 15 minutes or so. Human regular insulin action starts after 1 hour. Analogs are shorter acting and having peak at, let's say, 1 or 2 hours. Human insulin are having a peak at a slightly delayed. That's why there is a mismatch between the postprandial hyperglycemia after 2 hours and a regular human insulin peak. And that's why sometime after 2 hours, you find that your patients are developing inter-meal hypoglycemia. So this is a time action profile of this shorter acting prandial insulin. You can see here endogenous insulin red is very, very brisk and very short acting. So endogenous insulin is required. Very good amount is released, but it is for a shorter time. As compared to that, inhaled insulin are slightly more rapidly acting. Then you have analogs and insulins which are acting more rapidly. You have now aspart rapid acting, that is insulin aspart, which is now mixed with nicotinic acid, and it is now more rapidly acting. And then of course you have human insulin. So what is the advantage of this basal bolus insulin regimen? These are very effective regimen. Here, 1 basal and 3 short-acting boluses are given, and most of your patient, 2/3 of your patient will be achieving very tight control of hyperglycemia, and they will be achieving good A1C. But there are disadvantages because you have to give 4 insulin injections per day. Patients are having low adherence to these 4 insulin injections, and they have more chances of developing weight gain and hypoglycemia. So here you can see the representation in graphical manner. Why you have muted me by? So here you find, can you hear me, Puneet?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear
Yes,
me?
sir, your voice is clear.
आ रही है सर आवाज, पर आज बहुत डिस्टरबेंस है, मैं कनेक्ट ही नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ, बहुत मुश्किल से कनेक्ट
You're audible. You may
Actually, there was some message there that host has muted you. So
नहीं नहीं.
I am
now you're audible.
so
You
here
are
you
audible,
can see
sir.
the
हाँ, you
representation.
are audible.
Insulin,
Please continue.
basal insulin is a red line here without peak and lasting for more than 24 hours. The lower panel is prandial insulin, shorter acting insulin that is covering the postprandial hyperglycemia. And on the right panel, if you see, this is basal bolus insulin, 1 long acting and 3 short acting insulin. So this is how we treat our patients. But the disadvantages we already discussed. Pre-mixed insulin is very commonly used in Indian context. What is the pre-mixed? We are using this 30-70 most of the time before breakfast, before dinner. So it is convenient because you are giving only 2 shots here, but it is a combination of shorter acting, regular or analog insulin, and a NPH or analog NPH. So what happens here? The patient is taking them before breakfast and before dinner, and they have good control. But the problem is that the patient has to take his meal and his insulin at a fixed time. He can't have flexibility of taking it at any time. And then once he takes this insulin, he has to take his meal. If he's taking the mixtures of human insulin, then 30 minutes before meal, he has to take it. If he's taking analog mixtures, it has to be taken by 5 to 10 minutes before the meal. So that these are the disadvantages, and the chances of hypoglycemia is more. And as we discussed, it is less flexible. But you find that in Indian context, large number of our patients are on this pre-mixed insulin because of convenience of this insulin. So here you find comparison of basal bolus, pre-mixed and basal only. So once you have started insulin therapy as a basal insulin, you find that you are using targeting fasting hyperglycemia. Postprandial is less controlled here. It is very simple, no complexity. Insulin dose is also less. Chances of hypo and weight gain is also very, very low. As compared to that, basal bolus insulin, you find you are targeting both fasting as well as prandial glucose profile here. It is more complex and more insulin is required and more hypo and more weight gain. And pre-mixed insulin are in between. But as compared to basal insulin, you find that the chances of insulin hypoglycemia, insulin-induced hypoglycemia is more, and weight gain is also more. So now many of our patients are opting for this insulin pump therapy. Now we know that it is a important armamentarium in our type 1 diabetic patient, but still people who are type 2 diabetic patients are also opting for insulin therapy. These are the patients who are ideal. Who are the ideal patient? Those who are highly motivated, their quality of life further improves. There is slight improvement in HbA1c as compared to basal bolus therapy if they are on insulin pump. But there are very, very dedicated patient is required. They should know how to calculate carbohydrate counting, and they should be monitoring their blood glucose very frequently. So dear friends, now U500 insulin, regular human insulin is also available, but it is not available at Indian context. It is available in Europe and America. These are the insulin which are recommended when the patient require large amount of insulin. Many of our patients require more than 200 units per day. And there they are using this U500 because more insulin means you have to give larger amount of insulin that will be more painful in the subcutaneous area. And that's why this highly concentrated human U500 insulin are available. And once you are using this U500, their onset of action is delayed as compared to human regular, and they are lasting for a longer time. So they behave like NPH insulin once you are having this highly concentrated insulin. In the end, I will highlight a good, you can say, regimen that is a combination of basal insulin with GLP-1 receptor agonist. So you are using basal insulin. It is very simple to use. You are targeting fasting hyperglycemia. Chances of hypo and weight gain is very minimal here. As compared to that, if you are also using GLP-1 receptor agonist, it is having complementary mechanism of action and it is having additive effect. How it will happen? Because it is targeting postprandial hyperglycemia, it reduces weight and it do not cause hypoglycemia. So once you are using these two combinations, now these fixed dose, you can say combinations are also available by the name of Jultrophy, that where insulin degludec is combined with insulin, this liraglutide. So on one hand, when you are using this combination, better HbA1c reduction, better fasting reduction, and better postprandial reduction, but the side effect profile is not increasing. You find that the weight of the patient is decreasing, less chances of hypoglycemia, but there is slight nausea because of GLP-1 receptor agonist, and that subsides after a few weeks. But whenever we are using insulin, you have to be very, very careful that you are looking at hypoglycemia. Monitoring is frequently required, and we have to tell the patient what are the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia and how to manage it. Okay, and we know that hypoglycemia is far, far less in insulin glargine and degludec as compared to insulin NPH. And now novel insulin development is going on. There are now insulin patches. Oral insulin is also developed by many companies, but still undergoing, you can say, trials, and gels. And there are a term called smart insulin, which is a insulin composition which is with some substance which is glucose sensitive. So if the glucose is rising, then the insulin is released from that complex and is available. So these are called smart insulin. So there is a large amount of development which is going on. So in summary, dear friends, we can say that the type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease and patient require insulin. It is an expected treatment after some years of continuous use of oral anti-diabetic drugs. Choice of initial insulin should be individualized according to the patient's characteristic, but most commonly we are starting our initiation of insulin with basal insulin. Some evidences suggest that when the patient is first time diagnosed as type 2 diabetes, he is having glucotoxicity and he is having severe, you can say, catabolic symptoms. And here a short duration of insulin therapy for a period of few weeks to months is very, very helpful in reducing glucotoxicity. Patient whose glycemic remains uncontrolled after 2 or 3 oral anti-diabetic drugs, they require insulin. But ADA has changed its strategy. ADA says that the first injectable therapy should be GLP-1 receptor agonist like liraglutide or dulaglutide, or now semaglutide is also available in USA. Why they are pro GLP-1? Because their patients are very obese and GLP-1 receptor agonists are causing weight loss and they do not cause hypoglycemia, and that's why they prefer GLP-1 receptor agonist. But in Indian context, our patients are mainly requiring insulin because we are having very severe insulin deficiency, and basal insulin is a good time to start after 2 or 3 oral anti-diabetic drugs. First, we have to optimize the doses of insulin so that basal, you can say, fasting blood glucose are well controlled. Once fasting is well controlled, but still postprandial is high, then intensification is required with either basal plus or a pre-mixed insulin twice a day or basal bolus insulin therapy. New analog insulins are very helpful, and future technologies are keep on going, and they will be providing you more and more advanced versions of insulin. Now icodec, another insulin, basal insulin, is now available. We are taking a study with icodec where the basal insulin lasting for 7 days. So this is a icodec, which is a basal insulin which is now working for 7 days. So like a GLP-1 receptor agonist dulaglutide given once a week, you can give the icodec once a week. as a basal supplement. So I think I should stop here because there is a many more group of slides available, but I think we have covered large amount of basic information. So I can stop here. I stop sharing my slides and we can discuss many aspects of insulin therapy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I request Dr. Swati Srivastava to kindly continue the session, and Chairperson Dr. Arvind Gupta, sir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Giriraj. Thank you, Dr. S.K. Sharma, sir, for a very lucid and clear, with clarity. I am sure everyone understood very well the clarity of us, the importance of insulin, timely initiation, and how do we start and how do we initiate and how we intensify it. I think if there are any discussions for any questions, we don't see any in the chat box. Anyone wishes to give any comments,
You can unmute and we can discuss it out.
we can discuss.
Dr. S.K. Sharma, sir, the role of insulin co-formulations.
Yeah. Insulin co-formulation is insulin, degludec, and aspart. So here, why they say it is not a mixture? Why they label it as a co-formulation? Mixture means when the two insulins are similar type, only difference is their duration of action. Then it is mixture. But here, the insulin are altogether different. They do not interfere with each other. And that's why it is called co-formulation. So insulin degludec and insulin aspart is a insulin co-formulation. And it is available by the name of Rhizodec in India from Novo Nordics. Okay.
Is
And
there
another
any advantage of basal bolus? My point is.
advantage of basal bolus is that you are now using 4 insulin injections. So 3 insulin injections before meal and 1 long-acting insulin in the night time or any time, because now they are very long-acting. You can give them any time. So here you are taking care of both fasting as well as postprandial hyperglycemia. Here I can say all our type 1 diabetic patients are on basal bolus therapy. We never use a pre-mixed insulin twice a day in our type 2 diabetic patient, type 1 diabetic patient. All type 1 should be on basal bolus therapy. Type 2 diabetic patients, whenever you want tighter control, you have to give them basal bolus therapy. Or your patient is earlier well controlled with, let's say, pre-mixed or with a basal insulin, and now he is admitted in your hospital because of severe infection, septicemia or COVID, or undergoing steroid therapy or myocardial infarction, congestive heart failure, or you can say diabetic foot, severe bad diabetic foot. Now you require tight control, and tight control only can be achieved with basal bolus therapy. Here I want to highlight that basal bolus therapy is for the patients who are taking their regular meal, 3 meals. If the patient is really very critical and he is not taking his meal, then he should be given insulin infusion. Just what we are doing in our ICU section. There continuous insulin infusion is given and you target glucose profile between 140 to 180 milligram. Okay.
Dr. S.K. Sharma, sir.
Sir,
It was an excellent presentation. One question, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bataएं, sir.
When we start this basal insulin at the morning sample or the fasting is not fixed, that is, it is still high, then we increase the dose of the basal insulin. What can be the maximum doses of basal insulin, that is the lactose, which can be tested?
Very, very important question, Solanki sir. The usual recommendations are that if you are giving 0.5 unit per kilogram body weight, that is usual doses of basal insulin. Indian patients usually require something like our adult patient, 20 to 30 units of basal insulin most of the time. Of course, there are outliers who require 40 units. There are a few patients who require only 10 units. American patients, when we usually see their profile, you find they are using 60, 80 units of this basal insulin because their weight is also very high. But what happens here, once you are using and continuously up-titrating the basal insulin and fasting blood glucose is well controlled, now you don't have to increase basal insulin. Otherwise, patients will develop hypoglycemia. So once your fasting is well controlled, that is the limit for basal insulin. Okay, but still there are few patients where postprandial is still high because oral drugs are not acting in them. There you require either basal plus or basal bolus therapy. Okay, So most of the time we say the usual dose, maximum dose of basal insulin is 0.5 unit per kilogram of body weight. So your patient is 60 kg, maximum dose required is 30 units per day. Okay. Otherwise, you have to look into fasting and you keep on up titrating 2 units or 4 units every 3 or 5 days or so.
Sir, even after the maximum doses, there is 30 units of the basal. Sometimes the fasting is very high. So is it because of the Somagai effect of this?
Probably, because what happens, sometimes this patient develops nocturnal hypoglycemia and then post hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia. That is called
Right.
Somogy effect. So it may happen. And how to identify that? If you inquire from patient that he is having morning headache, nighttime, you can say nightmares, bad dreams, or in the morning he's having headache, or he's having sweating, significant sweating in the early hours when he get up. These are the indication. And how to identify? You ask him to put a alarm of at 2 to 3 a.m. and measure their blood glucose. If it is going low, then he has to reduce the doses of nighttime basal insulin rather than increasing. Because looking at only fasting, he sometimes keep on increasing the doses. And these are important points what you highlighted, Somogy effect. Sometimes we have to reduce the doses because he is developing post hyperglycemia.
Right.
That is Somogy effect.
Thank you, sir.
Minav sahab, your comments.
Sir, one question from
Yes.
my side.
Yes.
As we have premixed insulins with an NPH and conventional insulin and Ryzodex is available, why it is not glargine is mixed with other three analog insulins like glulucine, Lespart, and
Acidic.
Very good question. Actually, what happens when they developed glargine, it is highly acidic media. Okay. So because of its acidic medium, if you combine it with regular insulin that is of normal pH, so what happens? It precipitates. So you can't mix other insulin with glargine. Okay. And this is not happening with Degludec. Degludec is a neutral pH. And you can add other regular insulin, or you can say analog insulin like Aspart, they are mixing it in Ryzodex. There is no, you can say, precipitation of that insulin. So it is the pH of glargine. The mechanism of glargine is like this, that it is highly acidic. Once you inject it into the subcutaneous plane, because of change in the pH of our body, because it is acidic and our body is having 7.35 pH. So it is precipitated there in the subcutaneous plane. Very small micro precipitation occurs. And there is a gradual dissolution of insulin from that precipitates. And that is the cause of its long duration of action. Okay. As compared to that, Degludec is forming multi-hexamer change once you inject it, but it is having a regular pH. And Aspart is also injected with Ryzodex. So Aspart is acting as if it is Aspart only. So it is not interfering with each other. So Aspart acting as a short acting and Degludec acting as a very long acting.
That is why
You are muted.
glargine cannot be combined with any other because of its pH being acidic.
pH is
Two things which Dr. Sharma
yeah.
said.
Sir.
Yes, precipitation is a reason for a little pain when glargine is given as compared to other insulins.
Yeah.
It is slightly painful because of the acidic medium. Second use of Ryzodex, something very interesting, because now we know that we can use a basal insulin any time of the day. The fixed time, Ryzodex has a little choice of giving it this way, that way. But then once any time, and the advantage of using Ryzodex is you find out the meal with largest carbohydrate.
You can give it.
So the rapid acting insulin will be working on that meal,
Yeah.
and Ryzodex will be otherwise also acting as a basal insulin. So instead of using an extra OHA for this patient, that can be avoided. You can use some other medications, and less medications will help if Ryzodex is given. That is my contention.
Absolutely, sir. Because it is a combination of short acting analog and a very long acting. So you can target one of the meal which is having largest post meal glucose, and there you don't have to give a basal plus. So it is basically a basal plus.
Basal plus
Yeah.
automatically.
Same
Thank
here,
you.
sir. I am also giving the same Rhizodec in morning with the largest meal.
Yeah.
I never use that Gludec in night.
You can always give it.
Most
Yeah.
people have one single meal as the largest meal, so it is quite easy to titrate with that.
So I don't think any more questions. Question chat box.
I
let's
think,
see.
sir, Dr. Khivsara, Dr. R.K. Khivsara wanted to ask some questions. Dr. R.K. Khivsara?
Yes, I want to ask one question. That suppose patient is having OHA failure and we want to find out, can we go for the C-peptide test and then start insulin?
Well,
Should
I
we go
have
for
never,
the C-peptide test?
theoretically you are right, but I have never used C-peptide in my 35 years of, you can say,
No,
diabetes.
to convince patient that it is, there is no
No.
insulin any
You have
in
to
body.
convince him by so many other ways. You are
Okay.
saying that you are using 4 oral anti-diabetic drugs. You are using them in maximum doses and your sugar is still very high. So it is a theoretically you can always use, but practically we are not using this method. We are just using C-peptide to identify that the patient is having type 1 diabetes rather than type 2 diabetes.
Sometimes patient know at age of 35 years, suppose he is having a LADA and we are in doubt whether
For
it
the
is.
diagnosis, as I
Okay.
tell, LADA means type 1 diabetes in the above 30 years.
Yes,
So that
yes.
is LADA. So that is for the diagnosis, not for the making the treatment choice. Okay, but theoretically you are right. Can we go for C-peptide? This is your question. Another question
Yes,
is, some patients use basal insulin at night and morning and OHA in daytime and are happy. So if you are using very long-acting insulin, then twice a day long-acting insulin can be shifted to once a day only, like U300 or insulin Degludec can be given once a day only, if you are mainly supplying them as a basal insulin supplementation. Goel Saab, your comments. R.K. Goel sir, unmute yourself. आपको बहुत दिनों बाद देखा है, अनम्यूट कर लें सर. या वापस म्यूट हो गए सर, वापस अनम्यूट.
मैं करता हूँ सर.
या हाँ.
Sir, S.K. Sharma, sir, one more question, sir.
Yeah, please.
So if a diabetic patient who is not taking 2 or 3 meals and he is on Rhizodec once a day, can with the second meal, can we give this prendial insulin?
Why not?
Analog.
For example, you give Rhizodec at one meal and you
One
give
meal.
it as part as a insulin.
Second or third.
Yeah, insulin.
If it is higher on the after postprandial is higher, we
if
can
you
use
are
that
taking
also.
2 meals, one will be covered with Rhizodec, other will be covered with insulin, no rapid.
No rapid. Thank you, sir.
डॉक्टर अरविंद सर कुछ
यस
बोले?
सर सर बीच में थोड़ा हैंग हो गया था सर, मैंने मोबाइल से ज्वाइन किया है.
अच्छा.
So the only thing I was not there for a few minutes of your last of the talk.
You are not doing anything.
Sir, the only thing I want to tell my friends here that it is very difficult to initiate the insulin for the patient. They are all emotional. Patient is emotional. Their family members are emotional. So it is your motivation and your conviction which motivates your patients to take the insulin. That is the first thing. Second thing is, in a severe glucotoxicity patient where the patient's HbA1c is very, very high, 10, 11 or 12, in that case, if we know the molecular physiology, that molecular physiology says that in a severe glucotoxicity patients, the beta cells which are already been 72% are already lost, but remaining beta cells, some beta cells are going into the permanent apoptosis with the severe glucotoxicity, and few beta cells go into dedifferentiation and they become inactive. So when we start the insulin in a severe glucotoxicity patient, not only the patient's blood sugar is controlled, the glucotoxicity is relieved, but those dedifferentiated beta cells actually became active after some time. And this is something reward to the patient. And patient will be very happy because initially we start the insulin, glucotoxicity is relieved, and most of the time either we have to reduce the insulin doses, and in some cases we have to actually stop the insulin. So this is a reward. So
We discussed
initiation of
this.
insulin is the crux.
We discussed this point. That
Yes,
a
sir.
newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic patient, when there is severe lipoglucotoxicity
Yes, sir.
and their glucose profile is very high, they are severely catabolic. A 2
Yes,
week
sir.
to 4 weeks of intensive insulin therapy. There are so many trials
Yeah.
now. They have given this intensive insulin therapy, and after 15 days, they stopped it, and you find that they either don't require anything except lifestyle modification, or they require very low doses of oral drugs. But the problem again is the same what you highlighted. To convince a newly diagnosed
Yes.
type 2 diabetic patient to go for intensive
Yes.
insulin therapy is very, very difficult.
Sir,
Educated patient, many a times we are doing it, and we are getting very good results.
Yeah, especially when the patient's HbA1c is 9, 10, 11 or 12.
Catabolic.
In those
Basically,
cases,
if
I
the
think,
patient is catabolic, weight loss, severe hyperglycemia, severe triglyceride levels, and he is having polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia.
osmotic
These are how
symptoms.
you identify these patients.
Absolutely.
So one small thing in this regard only, in the current COVID scenario, I'm sure all of us have come across very often sudden high sugars and newly diagnosed diabetics, and in these patients sudden very rise surge of the sugars we are seeing, and we are seeing a very high dose of insulin requirement also, and that comes down rapidly as we keep on moving the treatment. Of course, corticosteroids and other factors are also there, but at least now with the COVID scenario, I think the patient acceptance of insulin, I think, is somewhat better, because the patients are so scared of COVID scenario that they have no questions to ask. Otherwise, they used to ask so many.
Many times, some of my friends are asking me that the COVID patient is there. We have started steroids and sugars are going very high. I just tell them one point: whenever you start steroids and patient is having either a known diabetic or now newly diagnosed diabetic, you have to give them basal bolus therapy.
Absolutely.
There should not be a patient on steroid, either diabetic or newly diagnosed hyperglycemia, who should not be on insulin. Everybody should be on insulin, and that's why we had so many mucormycosis occurring, because their sugars are very high, and this diabetic ketoacidosis is a very favorable environment for developing mucormycosis. This happens in many of our type 1 diabetic patients once they are developing type 1 diabetes and not properly treated, and coming to us with ketoacidosis, because acidosis is very favorable in causing very rapid growth of this mucormycosis. And during acidosis, there is a, you can say, availability of free iron that is again acting as a growth factor for mucormycosis. So both factors are there.
And the post meals also has to be taken care of in the corticosteroids group, especially. So basal bolus, both are important in this scenario.
One more important message is that once you are using these steroids, fasting blood glucose are many a times normal. But when you look at post lunch and
Lunch,
it is 300, 400, 500. So that is very important to look at all the meals and pre and post. That is
so basal bolus is must, I think, in all these COVID patients, especially on those on corticosteroids.
morning, they may not require higher doses, but lunch and dinner doses are to be given at a higher.
Once patient comes home, should we continue the same treatment at home also, or we can shift to metformin with the basal insulin?
Dr. Swati, बताएं.
That depends on the requirement. Like the patient, if we are talking about the COVID scenario, as the steroids are reducing, as the patient is improving, the inflammatory markers are improving. So in that stage, what we see is that the blood glucose levels start falling quite rapidly. and then we have to reduce the dose of insulin. Sometimes we can even have one insulin and the rest OHAs, and that also we have to keep on monitoring. And as the blood glucose falls, accordingly we have to reduce the dose. Usually what we see is a rapid reduction is required in sometimes, say around 10 days to 15 days later from the start of the disease, we do find that a rapid reduction of dose may be required. And we may need to stop the insulin overall also. Dr. S.K. Sharma, sir?
Bilkul, absolutely, because once you have stopped steroids, patient is recovering, then you find that his glucose profile is improving and you have to down titrate the doses, and then after some time you find that he is well controlled with either oral, or even if he is having only steroid induced hyperglycemia, then probably he may not require anything. So there is a question like pre-mix 30/70 given before breakfast and before lunch. What about lunch? Sorry, before breakfast and before dinner. What about lunch? You are right. That is the problem with pre-mixed insulin, that you have to look at lunch. If post-lunch sugars are really high, then of course you can bring in a shorter acting insulin before lunch. Sometimes we are using this 50/50 insulin 3 times a day, covering both breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all the 3 meals. So these are some of the important points.
Or sometimes we can give the oral drug in between. Yeah, so either AGI you can give, even DPP-4 inhibitors are working very well with premix insulin. Even SGLT2 inhibitors are working very well. So there is no problem.
In spite of that, sometimes you have very high sugar post-lunch.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
to bring in regular insulin before lunch.
Right.
So I think there is no further question.
Yes, I think.
So Dr. Parikh sir, I don't find him here. Dr. Parikh sir, AK Parikh sir, Chris sir, आपका last कोई comments?
Sir.
It is a very excellent presentation, sir, and we had a very good discussion also. Thanks to Dr. S.K. Sharma, sir, and our chairpersons.
Next, what is your choice for next Wednesday? Dr. Swati or Dr. Arvind Gupta can take it.
Sir, my take is for the next Wednesday, if we can have a one break. This is my personal thing. If we can have one break, we are waiting for type 1 module from the RSSDI. That's the only thing.
तो यार diabetes में कोई one break की क्या जरूरत है? I can give you 1000 modules.
Sir, सभी दे सकते. Sir, there is no problem.
This is not RSSDI Central. This is RSSDI Rajasthan chapter.
Okay.
Once you stop, people will disappear. So keep on.
Okay.
We keep the energy level high. And
ठीक है, sir. So next one.
We can identify a topic from our friends. What they
Sir,
want.
I think next will be diabetic food.
No problem. Or
Sir,
Swati, do you have any idea?
So emergencies also can be taken up.
Okay, huh? Because diabetic foot, what they say that RSSDI will roll out a diabetic foot module, and they will roll out a type 1. So we can leave these two topics and we can
Emergencies.
Emergencies.
Emergencies we can take, sir.
So
Yes.
next time we can take emergencies.
Okay. Next will be
Divide
emergency.
emergencies into two. One will be hypo and the other will be.
Hypo and then
So
DK.
you decide you will take hypo or you will take.
I will take hypo.
Dr. Swati will take
I will-
hypo.
I'll take DK.
I will take hypo. Swati will take hyper. That DK.
Diabetic ketoacidosis and
Yeah.
Sir, it will be very long actually, because
That's why I'm saying only one module. Now we have two modules. Hypo one module and hyper is second.
Sir, I will take hypo next.
Next
Yes,
time.
you can do
Okay.
that.
And
Yeah.
then,
you take hypoglycemia, and after that I can take hyperglycemic emergencies.
Okay.
And
Sure.
our other friends can give their choices and we will make it happen.
Sure.
My small submission was that because all these modules which already have been done will have to be now will further also delivered in the various district coordinators. So we'll have to
Right,
start
right.
that also, sir.
Yeah.
So
And
because they are quite a lot.
I will again suggest that why we not have some of these discussion at our Rajasthan RSSDI as a whole, not only at coordinators. So that sensitization of that Dr. Ramchandani.
Definitely, sir. That's why I am also planning, because the protocol of district coordinator 10th meeting is already 2 modules we have done.
Yeah.
This is the separate part we are doing in the Rajasthan. So why don't we can discuss this
Start that also.
knowledge to all the members of RSD Rajasthan chapter. So definitely I can share with this June meeting to all the members.
We can we can make some strategies and we can roll out that also. So
And I also agree with Dr. Swati that we should roll out this module to now district level or zonal level, so that and we can exchange that you have discussed the therapeutic wheel first. Next meeting, Dr. Swati or Dr. Arvind Gupta sir will discuss the therapeutic wheel. So the thing will be easier for everybody to discuss these problems.
Or we can ask the district coordinator also to.
we will be present there, and the district
He will be
coordinator
present.
will speak, and then we will cover him. Means
Right.
if there is any question answer or all those things, we can help him.
Right.
They will be confident that now they are you can say developing confidence in delivering this type of webinars, etc.
So when do we, sir, plan to do that? Like, when do we plan to start that? Like
This
immediately
depends
after?
on our enthusiastic coordinators like Dr. Solanki can start in next week, and we will be there with him, and you will be there with some other group, and Dr. Arvind will be there on third group. So one among us will be there, and somebody from other medical college and like Dr. Meenawat will be there as a covering, as a senior person with some of the other you can say coordinators. So you can always invite some of them and then roll out at the you can say peripheral level. Very good idea.
Girish Mathur sir, what's your comment, sir?
Sir, in my opinion, there are two things. One is district coordinator program, and another is RSCA program under RSDA Rajasthan chapter. So in district coordinator program, we should follow the instructions of central RSDI. We should follow the modules, and another program which can be CME under RSDI, we can have these regular CMEs, and that we should have not more than fortnightly. I think weekly is something very.
You are a busy person.
There are other programs also. There are other programs also. Weekly,
Attendance might fall.
You may not be able to attend, but all other people are coming here.
And it is for me also. It's not
so convenient at 9 to 10, 1 hour only. So every Wednesday, I think we should continue with. And district level, what we decided, because you were not there with the next meeting, Dr. Parikh sir told us that we, Rajasthan RSS, they can continue with our activity. So whenever they will give us their slides, we will roll them out. But they have not given, they have given only 2 modules and we have covered them. Okay. So
that was my point, sir. That is what I was trying to say, that these 2 modules are there. Suppose we start rolling out in the various districts, then that will also take a long time.
Absolutely.
Because we have around Dr. GD 31 districts, 33 districts. So 2 modules each means 66 weeks for that. So why don't we start doing that also? That was my point.
All the coordinators are here. They should be coming forward and telling us that they will rolling it out in.
It will not take 66 weeks, right? You can you can start the modules in district simultaneously. So you just need 2 to 4 weeks basically. Every district coordinator can start their module. So it's only if it's the 2 module schedule by central RSD, it will take hardly 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at the max, 4 to 5 weeks, right? If somebody is delayed or late.
So GD, it is your work to make them
done in 4 weeks. Will 66 jobs
and make it by zone. We can make
it
by zonal. One zone can do in 1 day.
So zonal also, if it is 8 zones are there, so at least 16 weeks we will require. No, it cannot be done in 4.
Okay, but
no,
all of you need not to join them.
For example, we have to be present there. So in 3 modules we will be present.
There are so many other doctors in the
there. Dr. Meenawat is there, Dr. Puneet is there. So so many other seniors are there.
So many other senior doctors, they are there. They can join one group.
Yeah. So one coordinator and one support system can be done.
One support. Then you can. Dr. GD will prepare that one who will be there in each group.
Okay.
Somebody,
You can make a schedule. Dr. GD Ramchandran, you can make a schedule for that.
Okay.
Like, I think at least we can start doing that. because that is the main focus of this RSS
absolutely.
coordinators.
So it is now fixed that next module will be on hypo and Dr.
Yes, sir.
Arvind will be, and
Sure,
next
sure, I'll do.
afterwards, Dr. Swati will take emergencies.
Yes.
I think we finish here. Over to Ramchandani.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. S.K. Sharma sir and Dr. Gupta sir and Dr. Swati for this wonderful train the trainer program of RSG Rasan chapter. I also thank all the delegates and all the district coordinators, zonal coordinators and EC members for attending, and they are very enthusiastic. And today there was some gap of 10 minutes because I was not tuned with this Zoom.
Admin.
Ajay has given me, and I was busy with congratulation part, and I was not able to join them. So I'm just make a pardon and sorry for that delay for joining those who are not able to join. Next time I'll try to. So thank you once again. So we'll meeting on next same 9 o'clock with the hypoglycemia, and the speaker is Dr. Arvind Gupta sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Please share these slides also.
these slides, the recording is there. So I'll share the recording of this slide.
Because we were late by 15-20 minutes.
No, definitely I'll share the recording of this slide. Definitely to all the members and all the coordinators in their group, and I will share them on their mail IDs also.
Okay, sure.
So thanks once again. Thank you. And
Thank you. Good night.
okay, sir. Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night, sir.
Night.
Good night. Good night,
Okay,
sir.
Good night. Anil,
Night.
सुमित सॉरी थोड़ा देर हो गया आप लोगों को ज्वाइन कराने में आशुतोष सुमित बहुत सारे लोग आज ज्वाइन करने में देर हो गई बिकॉज मैं बिजी था अर्जय ने ज्वाइन कराया नहीं सॉरी फॉर दैट
Okay, sir, no problem.
That's why first come, first serve. Huh?